Hi, everyone. I am Mitch Goddard of the 77 Group, and this week we're going to be talking about keeping your promises and why that's so important to effective leadership.
Okay, well, Mitch, welcome, and we're looking very forward. This is episode number 8 of our series, and on we go. And I just want to explain to people, I'm Frank Leone, and I speak every other week. I'm the host this week, and Mitch is the speaker, and we switch roles every other week. But first of all, I wanted to mention that each episode reflects a chapter of our sister books. I've written a book called 77 Ways to Perfect Your Communication Skills, Enhancing Your Personal and Professional Relationships, and that's out. In fact, may I again show you? There it is. It's a good-looking book. And this is the softcover version. The hardcover is even sexier. And Mitch will, sometime this summer, if all goes well, have his new book, 77 Principles, Tips, and Takeaways for Exceptional Leaders. So and each of them have 77 chapters, 154 chapters total, and that's what this YouTube series is all about, to alternately take a chapter from each book each week. If all goes according to plan, we'll be doing it for 154 weeks and get every chapter done. And it's a good adjunct. We hope that you can acquire the books as well, and to provide more in-depth information and to let you read something before each episode. But either way, it works for us. We also wanted to add that we ask you to leave questions in the comments section of this YouTube presentation. And each week we give an award, if you will, to the best question. So this will be Mitch's episode 8, and Mitch will pick one comment from readers, or not readers, but viewers of episode 8. And what we're doing is a complimentary 15-minute or so chat with that person, and we can talk about anything you want. So throw in some good questions, and I believe we're planning to have all of the questions and answers posted on our website as well. So all of that. And then finally, with regard to this YouTube presentation, please make sure that you subscribe if you're not subscribed already. We're very pleased. Last we looked, we zipped well beyond the 100 subscriber level, and we're hoping to get up over 200 soon, and over and above that in time. And like us, if you will, and leave your comments or questions. Especially love the comments and questions. I and Mitch both read every one, and we try to respond to as many of them as we can as well. So we're actively involved in the comments section. So all of those things. So in any event, I'm going to turn it back to Mitch and let him take control of episode number 8.
All right. Well, thanks, Frank. Appreciate that, and appreciate the overview of what the 77 Group is all about, and what a privilege it is to bring this to everyone along with you, Frank. And today I'm bringing from chapter 9 of my book, keep your promises. All right, so keeping your promises is important not only for leaders but for everyone. It speaks to your credibility and how much trust people can put in you that you're going to deliver on your word. So with that, starting with tip number 1, I suggest that you be very selective about the promises you make and who you make them to. And the reason why is because it's real easy to start, throwing promises out there in order to gain favor. But the real meat in making a promise is actually keeping the promise. An unknown quote, or a quote from an unknown source, says that people with good intentions make promises. People with good character keep them. So if you want your character to be judged as favorable, it's important you keep your promises and be very selective as to who you make promises to and how big the promises is that you're making.
Mitch, what if you can't keep a promise? You make a promise, but you can't keep it for some reason.
Well, then you've got to own it, and you've got to express a measure of humility and integrity by saying, I'm sorry, but I'm not going to be able to deliver on this. And again, timeliness is important here. You don't want to wait till after the deadline or the promise opportunity to fulfill has passed. You want to let the people know who you've made that commitment to as early as possible. And it could be external forces, or it might just be a bad decision on your part. Either way, you've got to own it. It's your promise. It's up to you to show the kind of character that you want people to know you for, that you're going to get in front of it and say, listen, I can't deliver. I need to either adjust or do something different here in order to move this project or this matter forward.
Okay, very good. How about tip number 2?
All right, so tip number 2, I suggest that you steer clear of offering empty or meaningless promises. If you're going to go and put yourself out there and make a commitment by making a promise to someone or some group or some organization or some stakeholder or partner that you work with, then it's important that that it's meaningful. That again, you're not being willy-nilly with your promises, and nothing empty. Empty promises don't carry any weight with them. They don't really matter. For instance, I can tell my wife, I promise to be home for dinner tonight. Okay. There might have been a time in my life when that was a big deal, but in my current lifestyle and situation, that's not a big deal. And I can't really score any points by saying, it's 5:30 and I made it home, to eat whatever delicious meal you prepared for me. It's got to be meaningful, and it can't just be something that, it isn't going to have an impact.
Okay, we talked about meaningless promises. Define in a little bit more depth what a meaningful promise is.
Okay, so I think either in business or in the home, the rule applies in both arenas. A meaningful promise, an example of a meaningful promise is meeting a deadline, talking to either your boss or the people that report to you to say that I'm going to have this fill in the blank completed in time for you to benefit or for you to move forward with your work. Those are meaningful. Something that actually brings value to whoever it is you're making the promise to. Again, a stakeholder, a partner, a collaborator, a member of your workforce, or maybe someone that you report to upstairs.
Okay, how about tip number 3?
So tip number 3 is don't make it hard on yourself. Stick to the basics. And what I'm saying here is that meaningful promises don't need to be we're going to fly to the moon and back kind of promise. It can be something as very basic and fundamental as, I'm going to treat everybody I meet with dignity and respect. Okay, I promise that anytime you walk into my office, I'm going to treat you with dignity and respect and not give you the bum's rush. I'm going to give you the time you need to express what's on your heart, and I'm not going to steal your dignity. So basic stuff like that is very important and fundamental and meaningful, but it's not such a stretch that you're going to really struggle to deliver.
You're saying stick to the basics. Define the basics for me.
Okay. So the basics can be something as simple as treating people with respect, to keep your word, again, that there's that fine line. You don't want to overextend, but you don't want to do something that nobody, has no meaning or bearing on anyone. Another example is, I promise you, I will always tell you the truth, no matter how painful, no matter how difficult it is, no matter how unfortunate the news might be or bad the news might be. And something like that, fundamental golden rule stuff, if you can deliver that on a regular basis, people will embrace that. They will respect you for it, and you'll maintain a good name with the people in your circle.
Okay, how about tip number 4?
All right, so moving into tip number 4, discourage big promises, grand promises from people who report to you. And one of the things that I found over my career in leading high-performing teams is that, especially new members to the team that are just getting integrated into the culture, that they want to leave their mark. And these are people that want to do their very best and have an impact on the team. And one of the things, and so what they end up doing is saying, I can deliver, I'll do this, I'll take care of that. And it's like, whoa, hold on. You want your people to be realistic in their goals and in the commitments they make. Because really a promise is a commitment. Just like in marriage, I promise to do this, I commit myself to you for the rest of my life. And when sometimes, again, the new person is a little eager to make an impact, and you've got to just slow them down, because if they bite off more than they can chew, chances are in time they're going to find that out, usually pretty quickly, and they're either going to kill themselves trying to keep up with the commitments or the promises they've made, and in the end they're going to become discouraged. They're going to withdraw. They might be inclined to offer some kind of deceit or deception, and really start seeing where other parts of their character may suffer because they're so interested in keeping those unrealistic promises. So as a leader, it's very important to shepherd your flock, as it were, to ensure that they are committing themselves to goals that are realistic, to commitments that they can deliver on, and to promises they can surely keep.
So, Mitch, you're the leader. You have somebody reporting to you, and that person approaches you brimming with enthusiasm and commitment, and says they're going to do something and promises you that they're going to do it. How do you calm them down in a way that's advantageous to them?
Well, great question, and really this is where the human dynamic comes in, which is such a critical part of building and maintaining relationships. And when someone comes up, full of fire and ready to save the world, it's important to just let them know that you appreciate the enthusiasm, you appreciate their commitment to contributing to the team, to contributing to the mission and helping the organization move forward. However, at that point, using that interpersonal dynamic, take the time to understand where they're coming from, and then share as much information as possible that to help them understand that, well, maybe that objective is better at another time, or maybe when we have more resources, then we can put that into action, or and just share that back and forth, and then ask for their opinion on that. Everybody wants to be thought of as a contributor, and you don't want to turn a situation like that into a lecture, but into an exchange of ideas. Hey, well, you probably didn't know this, but accounting says we can't spend that kind of money right now, or some other kind of external force is at play that might hinder your progress on this, and it's going to leave you short of fulfilling that promise, let's reassess where we are, and together maybe we can come up with some new game plan.
Okay, very good, Mitch. And I think you have a fifth tip up your sleeve.
I do, as a matter of fact. So, and this really is a tip / statement. And what I'm saying here is that promises are a verbal contract. When you make a promise to someone, then you, believe me, they're walking away thinking it's gold. And so, yeah, my boss just said such and such. And they are going to take that to the bank. They're going to walk it home to their spouse and say, guess what happened today? And guess what's going to happen, tomorrow, because my boss, or if it's in interpersonal with your family, yeah, well, my husband said this. And what we try to practice is more of a provisional plan before you promise. So basically, we're going to spitball some ideas. Any of those sound good, then we'll move into the planning stage before we make a firm and immovable promise. And just remember that verbal contract really bears about as much weight as any written contract, at least in the hearts and minds of the people you're making those contracts or those promises to. And I can tell you on a personal level, and I mentioned this in my book, that, probably about 15 years ago, one of my bosses, a senior level VP, who really carried a lot of goodwill and weight, not only with the whole organization, but with me personally, came to me and said, Mitch, we're crafting a new position with you in mind. And this is a role that is going to be very meaningful to the organization. You're the perfect person for this. In fact, as we're drafting this job description, we're keeping you in mind on this whole thing. It's going to be great. It's going to be a promotion. You'll have more responsibility. It's perfect for you. And I said, great, awesome. And he even went on to say as much as, this is going to happen, and you're gonna do very well with this company as a result of this. I promise. Well, some time started going by, and I was, getting back with him and saying, so how's that looking? I'm ready to make that transition. And over time, nothing really developed. And even though he looked me in the eye and said, you're going to be sitting in your new office and taking charge of this whole part of the organization, and he promised me this was going to happen, it never happened. At the end of the day, and for the remainder of our working relationship, I took it all in stride, didn't complain about it, and kept doing my job. And but our relationship was never the same. I looked at everything he said with a bit of a cynical eye, and really didn't have a whole lot of trust or faith in this person who I had just nothing but respect and admiration for before he ever uttered a word about this promotion or new role.
Well, despite the greatest intentions, too often promises are broken. When you've made a promise with the most noble of intentions, and you've had to break the promise, how do you deal with that?
Well, again, when you have to go back on your word, basically, really the only or at least the best way, I mean, there are probably several ways, but I think the most effective way is to, again, own it, walk forward, get in front of the people who you made the promise to, or the person you made the promise to, and just say, I am sorry, but I am going to have to break that promise, and express a strong measure of sincerity and humility that you're not going to be able to deliver. Whatever the reason is, most reasonable people will usually cut you a little slack as long as you are straight with them. If you're honest, if you're humble and you're sincere and you're respectful, then most people are going to say, you know what, okay, all right, I get it. You didn't have to come here and you know, with hat in hand and lay all this out for me. I appreciate that you did this, and you know, how do we move this forward? And then you re-engage.
Okay, very good. You have a question of the week winner.
Well, you know, I do, and before I do that, let me do a quick recap of today's 5 tips here from my chapter on keeping your promises. So number 1, be very selective about the promises you make and who you make them to. Number 2, steer clear of offering empty or meaningless promises. Tip number 3, don't make it hard on yourself. Stick to the basics, okay? Promises are a heavy lift sometimes, so don't make it harder on yourself than you have to. Number 4, discourage big, grand promises from the people who report to you, all right? Keep them sober, keep them focused on doing what they can handle so they can have a good and favorable outcome and a great track record. And finally, just understand that promises are verbal contracts. When you break them, you unleash a big problem for yourself unless you are humble and admit your shortcomings or whatever has come up, so you can regroup and move everything forward. Now, from episode 4, Katrina Sherman, and I hope I got her last name correct, she writes that number 1, she's a graduate with a master's degree in accounting. She lives in Las Vegas, and her question for episode number 4, which was be honest all the time, no matter what. And her question says that in our professional lives, were there an intersection between loyalty and honesty, which is really a great concept and a great way to describe it. So is there an intersection between loyalty and honesty? For example, if someone, a colleague or a friend, asks you not to share information with a certain person, and then that person asks you directly about the information the other person asked you not to share, what do? Basically, her question is honesty always the best policy, or are there exceptions? Well, I wrote back to Katrina and actually gave a lengthy response, and I'll keep it as succinct as I can, practicing what one of my mentors, Frank Leone, taught me in order to chop, to keep it very succinct. So, Katrina, yes, honesty is the best policy, and really, in a nutshell, here's why. When we make the choice, the deliberate choice to not be dishonest or to practice any measure of deception, we hurt our own credibility. And when we do that, we may hurt our chance at a developing relationship, or a chance at a promotion at work, or maybe a new job with a different company, or just a new friendship. And one of the points I make in episode number 4, be honest no matter what, is that be known as a truth teller. When people can respect that everything you say, everything you represent is honest, sincere, and is the truth with a capital T, then you're going to have a lot more credibility than if you're fudging a little bit on the truth. Little white lies are still lies and can still hurt your credibility. So with that, Katrina, you have earned yourself a 15-minute phone call with me or thereabouts to discuss this or any other topic on your mind. Happy to share my insights with you. Just email me at mitch@77grp.com, mitch@77grp.com. Let me know how to get in touch with you, and we'll set something up at your convenience. Thanks so much for that great question, Katrina. And the other part of the question, I should say, for both Frank and I, what's our favorite item on the menu at the iconic Granada Bistro and Hotel in downtown San Luis Obispo? And I've never officially eaten there, but I really did like the wine bar I saw them setting up the last time we were there. So maybe I might say something from the wine menu would be my favorite. How about you, Frank?
Yeah, well, I actually answered Katrina online, and what I basically told her is that I've never eaten at the bistro myself either. But when Mitch and I are in San Luis Obispo, we always have dinner at Mama Meatballs.
Mama Meatballs.
And here's a shocker. Our favorite item on the entree is meatballs. So but I'd say anybody's ever in San Luis Obispo, go get yourself a meatball at Mama Meatballs.
Right. And that's our unofficial field office for the 77 group as well. And that's where this whole partnership was born. So great call on that, Frank. Okay, so let's see.
Well, it's back to me unless you have something you want to add to the topic.
Nothing more today, Frank? It's all yours.
Super quick concluding remarks. Number one is hope to see you next week. It's my turn, episode number 9. In case you get confused, I'm the odd guy and Mitch is the even guy. So odd weeks, that's me. So next week is the communication track. And the topic is short questions beget short answers. It's actually a very, very good presentation. And tell you a little story about myself and one of the most famous politicians of the 20th century in the context of the topic of the week. So that's the first thing. Again, just a reminder, please subscribe. We just love every new subscriber that joins us. Please like us on your screen, and please leave comments or questions. That's very important to us as well. Then, as I think those of you that have seen previous episodes know, that we'd like to conclude each episode with just a personal thought from each of us. And I'll go first, and then we'll switch to Mitch for his thought. But my thought this week is simply this. To give a person a second chance, to never hold a grudge. And again, one of the advantages that I hope I can bring to these presentations is I've had a lot of years of life on this planet, and therefore I've made a lot of mistakes. But I could share those mistakes and maybe help people that are a little bit younger avoid them going forward. And I think one of the mistakes was sometimes I would misinterpret a person's behavior or motives, and dislike them and never give them another chance. And only maybe years later, I would find out that I just sacrificed a really good potential friendship and relationship or business contact. So my advice is never accept a first impression as your only impression. Give a person a second chance, and I bet more than half the time you'll be happy that you did. Mitch?
Amen to that. Sage advice as always, Frank. And for myself, a closing personal thought. And again, in keeping with today's topic, just remember that respect, credibility, and honor is not given just for the promises you make, but it is given for the promises that you keep. That's what's memorable on a positive side. And that's what you want to be known for keeping those promises and delivering every time you say you're going to.
Well, thank you very, very much for everybody that has given us some of your valuable time to tune in to episode number 8. We're very appreciative. If nobody watched this, we'd be deeply disappointed. So we're happy that you're out there. And we'll see you next week for episode number 9. And thank you, Mitch.
My pleasure, Frank. Thanks you. We'll see you next time, everyone.
Okay, bye-bye.